Hi everyone, nice to see you all. It's lovely to be over this side of the bridge. I don't get to leave the LGA much anymore, so it's lovely to be in Chatswood. So the reason I started with this slide of me when I was around about 20 something and was, very naughty and, just a rat bag really, is to talk to you about systemic change and systems and processes. And this image is from a thing called Climate Camp, where a whole group of people descend onto Newcastle for the sole purpose of shutting down coal infrastructure, which we managed to do very successfully, which was great. But the reason we were able to do that quite successfully is because grassroots activism, and specifically Climate Camp, works on this concept of wheel and spoke. So the organisational processes and the way that it's really organised is that you have all these little action groups that work as part of a collective. So you have a little group here, and then you have little outlier groups. So you have the wheel, you have the spoke, you have the hub, you have the spoke, which creates the wheel. It means that if you take out any one of the spokes, the wheel doesn't collapse. And that's really, that kind of thinking about organising systems is really critical when we're talking about achieving renewable energy targets and the other really sexy stuff that council does. But just keep that kind of concept of decentralised power, because we're talking about energy, power, get it? Yep. Cool. So that's what we're talking about. So I guess the reason I brought that up is because the reason why a bunch of ratbag kids were able to shut down major infrastructure for 4 days and had the police, despite the fact that they were in, police Barbie costumes to the hilt, there were police horses, there were police tanks, there were police everything. It was like G.I. Joes everywhere, and then a bunch of kids like me in our woolly jumpers that our nana knit. How did we beat them? Basically because when you're working as a decentralised system, you're nimble, you're agile, you're responsive, and you're collectively much stronger. So for institutions and structures like police, infrastructure, transport, security, whatever, it's really difficult to deal with that. And I think when we're talking about climate change and the kinds of the disruptive force that is, and we reflect on the systems that we rely on, it does put us in a very vulnerable position. So I guess my contention, what I'm getting at with the stuff that the city's doing, the stuff that the city does is really looking about where we fit within a power system and what we can do about it. So the next slide was the day that I kind of accidentally got elected into the council. And accidentally, because I didn't really, that wasn't the intention. I wanted to support the campaign. We were just really good at winning it. So there I was, used to being a ratbag anarchist, doing what I wanted, going, oh my God, institutional structures are crap, they don't even work. And then all of a sudden I'm in one. And I remain in it. And I think when you go from being kind of outside the system to in the system, and particularly at local government, you very much find yourself at the base of a power pyramid. And you get a very clear sense of what you can and can't achieve. So we know that in local government, we don't actually have, constitutional recognition. So we're very much at the mercy of whatever the state or the federal government of the day dictates. Well, David. So when you're at the bottom of a power pyramid, it means that when we did set out to go and have 100% renewable energy, the conditions at the time was such that we pretty much thought that the renewable energy targets and the carbon tax would go through. When that was repealed by our good friend from up the road, Mr. Abbott, it meant that the whole structural integrity of those targets were called into question. So we can say, of course, 70% of our energy is going to come from energy to waste, But if the structure of the state doesn't enable us to do that, then we're maxing out. So that, I guess, from the City of Sydney puts us in a situation where we have to reconceive of power and where we're able to influence change. So I guess what we did instead is we went, okay, well, as government, we can't do it ourselves. There's a regulatory environment in play that means that even if we wanted to, even if we had $10 million to throw out, we can't actually build an energy-to-waste treatment plant, nor can we turn on our tri-generation plants, which we actually have, and that's a real bummer. But what we can do is we can, and what we do is we take a lot of our money and we decentralise it into the community. So this is an example of a cooperative residential setup in Newtown called Stucco. Now Stucco, how much, I'm really bad with numbers, so they had, this is a $130,000 install. $80,000 of the money for this came from the City of Sydney. But what's really important is it reduced student energy bills by 55% year on year. So that's really significant. So there's actually an economic rationale for this restructuring and reorganisation of power. This is the other big ticket item. So this is a really interesting case study because what we're trying to achieve to be able to get renewable energy into the city is what we call microgrids. And opposite this building, which is One Central Park, we have UTS. Now, both buildings have the capacity to generate and store energy. Fortunately, UTS operates and requires energy mostly during the day because it's a functioning university. The residential dwelling, this building requires, it draws from the grid mostly at night. So that's a perfect microgrid scenario. However, be that as it may, we work within a state energy market regulatory system which actually doesn't allow for the sharing of microgrids peer-to-peer. So there's a lot of reasons why that's not allowed to happen. The main reason is that, and this is, I'm going to quote the Australian Electricity Market Commission, they said that creating microgrids within cities, which enables more renewable energy to come into the market and overall can cheapen bills, would build a new expensive subsidy into the regulatory framework, achieving little but higher prices for all consumers. But what it really means is that residents within the City of Sydney will continue to have to pay for dirty energy to come from the hunter rather than be able to use energy that is being collected from the sun in the city. So it's kind of unfair. It's really bloody annoying, actually. It's something that we really, I don't know, we advocate for, we're looking at it, but we do understand that we're just a little local government within the big hierarchy or bureaucratical infrastructure of the state and federal government. And the status quo at the moment says that we must get energy from 400 metres away down in the Hunter rather than from the solar panels on Redfern Park. So that's what we're dealing with at the moment. You could get quite depressed about that. I think it's sort of quite depressing, but recently I think a lot of the work and thinking that's been coming up around the circular economy is really interesting. And if you haven't read anything by Jeremy Rifkin, I really, really recommend that you do. And what he talks about is this third, I guess, industrial revolution where you've got a nexus between communication, transport and logistics and infrastructure. And for me, I think what he talks about is this decentralisation of not just institutional power, which is really important. We have to start treating communities with the respect and empowering communities to be able to generate their own electricity. Not only does he talk about the decentralisation of commercial power, but he also looks at the role of renewable energy within that scheme. And the reality is, and this is just like one of the most, like, I get really upset by this stuff all the time, and then I've just like stuck this on my wall for when I get really upset. So Jeremy Rifkin says that I can't even say. But basically, he said that coal is dead. Fossil fuels are dead. And he's an economist. It's not like your hippie mate saying, guess what? Fossil fuels are dead. We don't have to worry. It's like, it's a world famous economist who advises Angela Merkel and the Chinese government. So you have a tendency to have a little bit of guarded hope when somebody like that is saying, well, fundamentally, the structures that we have, the networks that we have that support fossil fuels are actually fundamentally incompatible with the new economy that relies on the Internet of Things. And that, for me, I suppose, is a really wonderful opportunity. It's really hopeful, although guarded hopeful, but it's actually just really logical if you're looking at the way that we're going to have to evolve to deal with and address with all of these disruptions. We kind of have to go will and spoke on it all. We have to be decentralised communities. And I think that when that does happen, it gives everybody a greater opportunity to contribute, to be rewarded, and to really, I suppose, be a little bit more creative and empowered with how they can conceive of their own life. So I'm excited about the future of cities. Read or watch Jeremy Rifkin. This is pretty funny. You know, I used to be the TEDx curator for food, right? Remo's going to bloody kill me if he sees me standing up here. There's no relationship between any... We're not connected, are we, Bernie? No. Yes. It's all good. Anyway, that's about enough from me. If you would ever like to talk to me about how awesome Jeremy Rifkin is and circular economies, or if you just sometimes get a little bit sad and need a G up, I'm good for it. If you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm also up for a bit of a roll, if you like. I'm not that good at BJJ, just saying. But thank you. It's been a delight to make my way over this side of the bridge and to be in such wonderful company with all these good people. So thank you and have a lovely afternoon.